Cool, so this morning we'll look at event listeners. So a few of you have already started using event listeners in your app, or at least in the JavaScript training, JavaScript React training, yeah? So we will look at how to set up event listeners in React. We'll look at how to handle some of these events. And we will also look at maybe an older way of doing things just if you were in vanilla JavaScript rather than being in the React ecosystem, yeah? So, firstly, let's say I wanted to click on button 1 and change the text color to red, for example, right? Really simple, basic example. How would I go about doing that? So this is my code so far. We've just got our 3 buttons here. So how would I set up an event to, when I click that button, change the text color to red? Yep, so we could use an on-click event. Where do I set that event and how do I set it?
Just after button ID, button 1 class box.
So you want to put it inside of my opening button element there, yeah?
Absolutely.
Makes sense? So usually, if you're used to HTML, we would type on click like that. Is that what we do in React?
Capital C.
Capital C, yeah. Must be camel case because we're in React, yeah? Just be aware of that. And then what goes inside my on click? I put it in curly braces because I want it to be a bit of JavaScript.
What do you want the color to change on? The text, the page, the button, what is?
The button text. So button 1 to change into button 1 in red. That's all.
In red,
So that would be the bottom.
You have an ID, right? ID called button 1.
There's an ID called button 1, absolutely.
Why don't we call it button 1 for color, background color or color? Just like CSS inside.
So often, if we use an inline handler like this, we don't need to select the element because we're already inside the element, right? The click event has originated from the button itself. So with a lot of events, let's say I just want to create another function to actually handle my event, yeah? So I could just, for example, say handle button 1. It's now complaining because obviously handle button 1 is not defined. That's fine, we haven't done that yet. So this on click here is setting up what we call an event listener. So there are many events in the browser and also in lots of other extensions that we have for the browser. Can anyone think of any other events besides on click? On change, yeah, you've used that one before.
Hover.
Hover, so you're thinking probably when you used it in CSS, right? So that's more like a CSS pseudo selector, but there's something very similar in the browser. Could anyone think of what's quite similar to hover as a browser event? So similar to hover. Focus would be one, yeah. But we tend to have keyboard events, we have mouse events, we have other sorts of events, form events.
Link event, toggle.
Toggle, don't know what that belongs to or whether it's an event. I'm thinking of on mouse enter and on mouse leave, which is what Kelly's just said. Yes, that's very similar to hover. When the mouse moves over that element, that will trigger an event. When the mouse leaves that element, that will trigger another event. So if you're interested in what sort of events there are in the browser, then again you can just go to MDM, look at the event reference, and it lists some common categories here, right? So just based on things that happen in the browser, you know, have things loaded, aborted, caused an error. Network events, right, we can detect those. focus events, which I think is what Sonia just mentioned. Also blur events, which essentially is when it's lost focus. So you can usually focus on an element just by hitting the tab in your browser, and that will change the focus of each element. There are ways to set what autofocus is when you load a page, and also what order to navigate through elements in. WebSockets, so we haven't talked about those, but again, there's a lot of events, right? You get the idea. There are animation events, so for CSS. Forms, on submit, that's a really common one. Yeah. And then to do with changing of the screen as well, the resize event is often used. Clipboard events, they even have event triggers, right? Cut, copy, paste. This is probably, I'm not even sure, but this is probably how we're detecting it on the platform when you copy and paste and we give you that little message, right? That copying and pasting is an anti-pattern. So we're probably detecting this event in the browser that's being triggered.
It's cancelled as well. If you right click, it could be, it's not there. It's disabled.
Yeah, exactly. And you can disable that on some websites, right? If you've got protected material, you can disable the right click. All those sorts of things would be linked to events. Yeah. Keyboard events. Mouse events, yeah, lots of mouse events. As we said, mouse enter, mouse leave. So you get the idea that browsers and JavaScript themselves can do a lot of different things with events, right? It's not just limited to your basic on-click stuff. It's well worth exploring and playing around with some of these. The new API that allows drag and drop events is pretty cool. Yes, we can do some fun stuff with that to move elements around our page. Linked with a canvas, we can let people actually move things, and those coordinates will persist. Yeah, there's a few good YouTube videos. I'll try and dig one out. Just things we can do with the browser that people aren't aware of, right? We always jump straight into JavaScript, but we forget sometimes about these browser events that they're linked to and what power they have as well. So. Cool. Anyway, coming back to the code. So we said that we could do an on-click event, and we could maybe just set up a function to handle that. And what I wanted to get across is that when we trigger an event, with a lot of events, an event object gets created that we can pass to our function. And I want to take a very brief look at this event object now to show you what some of the things it contains. So if I want to create a new function called handle button, how am I going to do it? What sort of syntax can I use?
You can use the callback function.
I could use a callback function. How about if I just wrote it like that?
Isn't there a way to set const or something?
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So const handle button 1, right? And then sorry, and that is equal to my callback head. Yeah. And then inside I can do whatever I wish. Unexpected use of event. Am I not allowed to call it event? Let's see. Maybe not. No restricted global. Let's call it E instead. Fine. And then let's just log this event object to the console to see what it contains. And we could also, some very common ones, you've probably used it in the JavaScript training, e.target.value, or just e.target, yeah. So what are those things doing? Let's take a look, see what they refer to. It could have e.type, all these sorts of things. Anyway, let's have a look in the console and see what we've got. E is not defined, line 12. So do I need a callback there, right, to send it in? I don't even need to pass it. Just like that then. Let's have a look. Have a look at my console. Right, so button 1, we should have some sort of an event, yeah? Cool. So the first thing that we console logged was this event object. And we can see that it contains a hell of a lot of properties, yeah? All of these things are attached to the event object. Wow. So there's a few key ones that we actually use quite a lot. One of them's e.target. So that was the thing that I logged next. And look what it is. It's the actual button that we want to change, yeah? It's the button element with an ID of button 1. So there's no need to get element by ID because it's already there for us. It's already accessible. Yeah, it's been stored in this object. And I did e.type as my last thing, and it's returned a string saying click. So I now know that that's a click event. Yeah, so you could handle click events in a different way to, say you had another event on button 1, an on-change event as well, and we only wanted to handle the on-click events, we could just do a quick little logic check for that first. Yeah, there's lots of things we can do. I just wanted to show you that that thing exists and we can use it in some way. So how about now we want to change the text to be read. So we're going to do it using JavaScript rather than put any new CSS or anything like that. Any ideas how we would begin to solve that problem? What could we use out of these things? Any ideas? No? So I want to change the color of the text in the button to red. Yeah? Back to the same question. How would I do that? Need to choose a button. So at the moment I've only got one on-click event. Yeah? And that's inside of button 1. So I want to change the text of button 1 to be red. Simple as that. Sort of. I could definitely use the style attribute. Yeah, I could do that. I don't need to use this. I'm just in the functional component at the moment. I don't need to use this in any way. Okay, but didn't we just say that in our console, when we click the button, we've listed the element here. So we've got the button. Yeah? So can we use that? Can we use e.target? Yeah. The same as you've used e.target.value in the platform. You can just use e.target and give it some more properties. In this case, absolutely, yeah, we want to give it a style. So we could do something like e.target.style equals. Oh, but yeah, what style do I want to change? I said I want to change the color of the font. So what do I want to use?
I don't know.
What CSS property can I?
Font color?
Font color?
No, just color.
Just color, yeah.
Color, yeah.
So I can do it like that. e.target.style.color equals, and then whatever the value I want to give it. Let's try that now. And it changed to red. Yeah. Simple as that.
So that's using inline CSS style. What about
That's using inline CSS styling, yeah.
So what if the CSS is not inline?
What if the CSS? Well, it's adding properties. Yeah, it's adding inline style properties to the element using JavaScript. Yeah. How would we do it otherwise? You're saying you want to actually edit the CSS file, yeah?
Yeah, because if you want to separate it, it's I mean, it doesn't need to be specific to because if you already have a CSS file when you're trying to change.
Yeah. I think it's going to complicate it a bit more, yeah? So I think that's the easiest way just for a quick demo. I mean, we're not looking at how to edit external files using JavaScript at this stage. We're just looking at how to handle events, right? So it was just an example to show you that an event's being run, really, yeah? we can look at how to edit other files using JavaScript at a later stage, right? Cool. So, is this function here limited to button 1? So if I called it style text red instead,
How will you know? Okay.
so will this still change button 1?
You should.
Yeah. So how about if I move the event down into button 2? Would it change button 1 or button 2?
Both. 1 and 2.
Yeah. The one you beat.
So when I click button 2, does it change both buttons at once, or? Right, yeah. So if we did that, then button 2's changed to red. Button 1 has been left alone. Why? Because we were specifically specifying e.target, yeah? But how about if we did want to initiate an event on one element and change a different element? Is that possible? Yeah, definitely. We've had the question before though, so I just want to show that it is possible. How would we do that? With what? Toggle? Can you give me an example? I don't know how you want to use it. I don't understand. Toggle, I don't know what that means. How do you want to use toggle?
Well, I told change the one space from another.
Right, so what do I do? E dot toggle? What do I...
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Let's not go down that route then. I'm not sure how you would do that, or even if it's possible with toggle. Yeah. So, any other suggestions?
I think you can get index current element and get the next one.
Yeah. So if you googled something like DOM selectors, then you'll probably see that there are a few options available to you. Alright, less modern ones that we used to have were, no, can't even find them there, but does anyone know any element selectors for the, yeah, so we used to have things like, so I'm not probably going to use the event object anymore, so we used to have get element by ID, yeah, what does, can I just use it like that, or does it have to be attached to an object?
Yeah, it's attached to that.
Document, yeah, nice. It's attached to the document object, right? Document.get element by ID, and then let's say I wanted to change the style of button 1. Then I would put inside of here button 1, right? Even if I don't have an on-click event on button 1 now, it should be possible to change the color of button 1.
Where does document come from? Sorry.
So document is defined in your browser. I can show you that. What's the global object in JavaScript? Window, fantastic. What is possibly attached to the window? I think it's just one level down. Documents, yeah? Is it written like that? I hope it is, yeah. So the document contains all of this stuff. So it's essentially your web page, yeah? Your document is just a JavaScript object that contains all of these methods and properties and all that sort of stuff, yeah? All our events are here. Say again?
So the cookies are in there, cookies.
The cookies are stored here, are they? Yeah, cookie, yeah.
To get this,
How to get what? The
this object, this page.
So I've just done in my console, console.dear window.document. So So you could do the same from any JavaScript file. You could just access window.document to access the document in your current page. Yeah. So where were we? Yeah. So we've tried to access button 1. Let's actually store it in a variable. And then how are we going to change button 1 to red?
B1 equals E target.
So you're saying we do b1 equals e.target.style.color. No, it won't. So what could we do instead?
Is it B1 dot target?
b1.target. We're getting closer. b1.target. Does button 1 have a target property? It's got an ID. It's got a class. I can't see any target on it.
No, B1 dot style.
b1.style. Yes, it will understand that. It will add a style attribute with a color of red, yeah, and that will be interpreted by the browser. So now, whoops, where are we? When we click on button 2, button 1 should change color, and it does. Yeah.
I didn't get that part.
Huh?
I didn't get that part.
It didn't get that part.
No.
Did anyone else get that part and want to try and explain it to Seb?
Shall I?
Yeah, go ahead, Ahmed, if you want.
Okay, well, we targeted button 1 through the document object to document.element by ID and assigned to B1 variable.
That is
Because it's the same as the ID?
Yeah, so this button 1 matches this element here.
Okay.
So that means that when we've triggered the style text red event, it has selected a specific element in the page, in this case button 1. So now when we do button 1.style.color, of course it changes this element rather than the one that the event got triggered on.
So if inside the parentheses you would write button 3, it would target that one.
Yep, let's do it. So if we now put button 3, it's going to look for an ID of button 3 and it will target that one and change it to red. Yep. Button 2 is yeah, there we go. Click on button 2 and it changes button 3. Click on button 2, change button 3. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, really nice. How about, I've just put an anchor tag here, and usually when we click on anchors, it will take us somewhere, right? In this case, I've just said go to Google. Right, go to google.com. So if I click on that, it will open a page that goes to Google. How about if I wanted, I mean it's a really weird example, but how about if I wanted to click on an anchor, stop its default behavior, so stop it going to a link and do something else? Not necessarily redirect it. Maybe I want to still change the color of a button. I don't know. I just want to do something other than going to Google. I want to stop its default action. That's what I want to do. I think someone had said it already. Is it you, Esteban? Did you say it? Yeah, nice. So let's say we also put in our anchor tag, sorry to overuse onClick, but it's just the easiest to demo with. So we put another onClick event and we call it, I don't know, stop link, right? And then we can create a brand new function up here called stop link. And what we can do with that is, what did you say to do, Esteban? So we need the event object again, and we can call prevent default on the event object. And now the button should do nothing. Sorry, the link should do nothing. Yeah? It's not going to Google. How do I change the text of that? Go to Google or not? It's the same sort of format, yeah? e.target dot what? Style. I want to change the text.
Size?
Nope, just change the actual message. So at the moment it says,
Inner channel.
yep, yeah, well it's one version we could do, right? We could do inner HTML. I think it's all capitals, I'm not entirely sure.
Inner smaller.
I'm not sure, I can't remember. So we're going to try it this way.
Channel, big letters.
Yeah, which is what I've written, yeah? It's the delay maybe on YouTube.
You need to equal.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's not a method, it's a property, yeah. So it needs to be equal to, let's say, I don't know, now we don't go to Google, right? How do I? Thank you. Is it forward slash? Yeah, it's a backslash, right? The escape character. So that will allow me to use the apostrophe inside of there.
The backslash lets you use without the system thinking it's.
Without the system thinking I'm closing the string, yeah? Because usually in JavaScript that means string, right? End or start of string. So it was stopping my string there and treating the rest as a variable. But what we can do is we can say, put a backslash in there, and that makes it interpret it as the backslash, as the apostrophe character. Cool. Because we've changed our inner HTML to that message now, whenever I click on the link, it doesn't go to Google. It instead just says, now we don't go to Google. Yeah, so again, events are just another way that we can add some interactivity to our pages, make it a bit more exciting. I know my examples weren't too exciting, but hopefully you can see the potential, right? That you can select any element on the page and define some custom behavior. You know, you could have, that could trigger an animation, it could totally reload certain sections of the page, all based on events, really, yeah? Any questions on that so far? Anyone want to trial any different events, see what they do?
I think maybe it's related with this. I know a web page that only displays if you're online.
A web page that only displays if you're online. That sounds like most web pages to me. So,
No. It only displays when you are offline.
oh, when you're offline. Oh, right, offline. So in other words, it loads something from the cache or from storage, yeah? Like a progressive web app. So
When you open it, it says go offline.
Right, yeah.
And if you go offline, you can see it.
Yep, I'm sure it is related to an event. I'm not quite sure what event it was using. What have we got here? Event reference. I thought I saw one earlier. There you go, network events. So you could detect that. You could detect the offline event. So if we add event listener to the window object, right, to our global JavaScript object, if it's offline, do something. So in other words, load a certain web page if you're offline, or load certain assets when you're offline. Yeah. I guess that brings me on to the other way to add event listeners.
Why means you don't have internet?
Yes.
Yeah, there's no network connection. Right, it will detect whether you've got a network connection or not. Cool. So notice that there, they've added an event listener directly to an object. In this case, the window object. So rather than adding things inline like that, this is React inline though. So going on underneath the hood is very, very similar to doing the add event listener way of adding events. But React just lets us write them inline because it's easier. So how could I use the add event listener perhaps instead? Where would it go? Because if I did it just up here, it's going to look possibly for a certain DOM element, and the DOM hasn't been drawn yet. So I need to do it after my DOM has loaded. Yeah, otherwise it won't be able to attach the event listeners. So it would, in a class-based component, be under component did mount. In a functional-based component, instead we could use the UseEffectHook, which we're going to talk about a bit more in detail this afternoon. Yeah. So for now, I'm going to use an old-fashioned way of doing it, and then we'll rewrite it this afternoon to show how to use the UseEffectHook. Yeah. I forget the syntax a little bit for the old-fashioned way, so instead I think I've still got it here. Ooh, have I? Maybe not. Yeah. Cool. So we can essentially, again, I wouldn't usually put it in the return statement, but just for now, to make it easier, that's what I'm going to do. What is that block doing there? It's not doing anything, is it? Where's my B2 coming from? Let's get rid of those warnings. Here, right? Yeah. So if instead I use just the old-fashioned way of doing things, I use a document.add event listener. Where's my unexpected let? Here, right? Bum, 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 bum.
Unless you type documented on every listener, the DOM content loader has not been loaded. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I'm making sure that the DOM content event has been triggered. It's been loaded first before adding my event listener, right? That was the idea. Let me just go back here, I think, and then rather than try and debug that, that one was working. Cool. Yeah. So what we're trying to do here is add some event listeners when the DOM has been loaded. We'll show you how to do this with UseEffect later on. And then again, we can just select our element this time by either a getElement by ID, or a more modern way that we can use is using the selector API, which is now built into the browser. So query selector or query selector all, if you've ever heard of those, and we could specify that we wanted an ID by putting the hash symbol and then button 3, and that would make sure I selected the button 3 element in the page. I could then add my event listener to a specific element, for example the mouse enter. I know, what do you want to do when we enter the mouse enter button 2? What do you want to change? Something easy, please. You want to change the background color or what? Yeah? Huh? Make background blue. Cool. So that can go in handle button 2, yeah? So on mouse enter, we want to trigger handle button 2, and therefore we could do e.target, same pattern, right? Dot style, oops, not query selector. Dot what? What's my property for the background? Background would work, or background color would also work. Equals blue I think he wants, yeah? Not cerulean, but blue, yeah? You don't remember that question on the platform, obviously. Cool. And then I got triggered immediately. Cool. So now hopefully we've managed to, after the document's loaded, set up an event listener on button 2, alright, that triggers when we enter that button. Let's have a look. Where have I done that? Let's fix those errors first, right? So here we've got class rather than class name. Thanks. It's better. So when we go into button 2, there we go, changes to blue. We have no mouse leave event, so it stays blue, right, no matter what we do. But that correctly set it up. Now let's see if we didn't have that DOM content loaded one, and we just tried to, will it work where we're putting it? Not too sure. In fact, we'll leave those ones and we'll just take 28. Because I'm declaring in my return, isn't it? That's the issue. So as I say, I'll show you a better way to do this afternoon. I think I'll leave it like that for now. Alright, I just want to show you this one as well though. So this is a very old way of doing it. We can just literally assign properties to our element. And if I did that, it's going to trigger the handle button 3 event, and it should change the HTML to I got triggered immediately. Yeah, so that one unfortunately got triggered immediately just as soon as the page loaded. So we set an event and triggered it all in one. Yeah, so you're calling the event there straight away as soon as you set the property. So if you wanted to assign things in this way, you would have to use a callback, yeah? So that it doesn't trigger it immediately, it only triggers it when you click on it. Now it's button 3 and it's not triggering either.
This is on click.
Oh, on lick. It's a totally different event. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that one's defined yet. Oh, still not working. Why not? Button 3 on click, handle button 3. Oh, I haven't put in my button 3 in there. Oh no, what's going on? Button 3
So what's our you have
yeah, that's fine. We can rename it. What did we have before? We had that before, right? Weird. Oh, alright. Why is that not working? I thought that should work. Handle button 3, handle button 3. Strange. Alright. Anyway, that's the old-fashioned method of using it, so don't use it too much, but I'll try and work out another stage where it wasn't working. I can send you the snippet as usual, but any general questions on event handlers or what is best to use? Do you want to look at some class-based methods as well? Because of course you wouldn't write it like that. So that might be useful actually. Just can we quickly go over how to write events using a class component? Tell me the syntax, guys, for a class-based component. What do I need? Say again? Yeah, that will work. Extends React dot component. Component we're going to need to import. Then, sorry?
Do we need the components at the top?
Yeah. Oh, not if you're doing React dot component. No, sorry. No, so we could do that. Agreed. Let's get rid of all of our events for now. Leave our buttons. Get rid of those. What else do I need? A render. Why do we need a constructor?
No, you don't. Okay, there's not, we don't have this, okay.
Anything else? Yeah? So are we still displaying? Nope. Line 9, line 12, because our events aren't defined yet. So how do I define my events, right? This is the key thing. In class-based components, how do we define events? So we need to set a method, of course, called handle, click, and Google or no. We did that with our functional components like this, right? So I'll just write the old way in. Const handle click equals function. So this is what we had for our functional components, something like this. But of course it's complaining now, right? We can't use const or let or var or anything like that inside of our class-based component. So how do we get around this?
We remove it.
We just remove it. Okay, so it's not complaining now. Yeah, okay, yep. So we can do the same, right? E dot target dot style dot color. So it's not complaining. Is this going to work yet? You're not sure about what, sorry? That, right, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Why do you need a constructor?
I haven't said whether we need a constructor or not at all yet. Is my server even running? Yes, it is.
No,
Yeah. So look, handle click is not defined, Google or no is not defined. So these aren't defined. What's the problem? We're in a class-based component. This, right? We haven't used this. If we're in a class-based component, we need to reference it using this. Yeah, this dot handle click, this dot Google or no. It's now compiled successfully. I'm not going to say whether it works or not yet, but should we have a look?
But if we're using this, are we not meant to now use in the constructor this dot states?
So you're saying that this won't work without having a constructor, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one did I set it to? Yeah, button one. There we go. So they work. Yeah? You can't use this in the constructor without calling super, I think. Yeah? But we can use it down here. That's not a problem. Yeah, so that's one method we can do. So that's probably the most similar method to our functional based components, right? This looks very, very similar. The only difference was we don't have the const or let. It automatically knows it's a method, yeah, that we want to define inside of the class. So we don't need to append it with any sort of variable initializer. Yeah? And then down here, rather than just writing the name of the variable or the name of the method, we have to write this dot name of the method. Right? That's the only real difference there, apart from the other syntactic differences, right, for a class to a function. So that's the way I like the best now for modern events using class-based components, and they call this property initializer syntax, or is it class methods? What do they call it? Definitely property initializer syntax, but so that's that. There's another name as well that's slightly escaped me, I apologise. Cool. There's two other ways that you've probably been using. I think in a lot of our videos we use an arrow function like this. Yeah? This dot handle click, written like that as a callback. You seen that before? Yeah? How does that change up here? Does it still work? Yeah? So we need to change something. Need to make sure, oops, we definitely pass in our arguments. There we go. And now it works, yeah? But there is no need to do that now. And this is also duplicating our callbacks, right? We've essentially got a callback function and another callback function here. So instead, when you write it that way, you probably usually just do that, right? You see the difference between these two?
Yeah.
So this has got its own arrow function in it when we haven't got an arrow function down here. If you've got an arrow function in the render, you don't need your arrow function up the top. Right? Anyone know why we would use one of those styles over the other? No?
Would you do the original one? Yeah, the function, decided callback function.
So like this. So this was the original.
Yeah, the original.
The Google or no was the original style. Yeah. So why is that better or worse?
Because it's clearer, as in, like, the second time you show us it with the button one, it's quite scrunched up, more difficult to read, instead of just having the entire sort of callback function at the top.
Yeah, I mean, you could make that argument. Some would agree with you, some wouldn't. It's more readable. But there is a performance benefit as well of doing it this way. Because if you've defined a function down here, on every single render, it will create a new function. So there will be a slight performance hit, yeah, by defining things down here. You've defined a function down here, so that function gets recreated and stored in memory each time. Up here, this is just a reference that points to your function that's created outside of your render. So that function gets created once and stored in memory and reused as many times as necessary. Yeah, so this is slightly better. The benefit is tiny in small apps, but in very, very large apps, the benefit could be more significant. Yeah?
Sorry, I just want to try and get this. So you're saying to use the arrow function, you need to also make sure that you replace this dot Google or no.
Mm-hmm.
You have to write it as the same way, or do you need to write it as an arrow function as well?
No. So that's what we're saying. You've got this way
Yeah.
with the handle click, and you define your arrow function inside of your render here. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that means you're going to create a new function each time you rerun your render method. Performance-wise, that's not the best.
Okay.
So instead, the preferred method is this way, where you create just a reference to your arrow function that is defined outside of your render method.
Okay.
Yeah? So this is the preferred syntax. And then Esteban's very good at using the bind method, right? You use bind in your constructor quite a lot, Esteban. So if you already had a constructor, of course you could bind inside of the constructor as well. And that format will look similar to this one. And then your format down here, Esteban, remind me, I never use it. Is it going to be the same, like that? Yeah?
Yeah,
But, unfortunately, you're going to need to create a constructor, right? To house your bind method, or can you just write it outside? What is it? Is this dot
the name of the
Google or no equals this dot Google or no open brackets this dot Google or no open brackets this, like that.
No, the bind.
Oh, dot, of course, dot bind. So this that way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool. Unexpected token, right? Line 6. So we can't use this unless it's inside our constructor. So now it's happy. Now it's correctly bound. And hopefully that will work. Oh yeah, that's all I've done, right? Prevent default. So just to check it's definitely working. e.target.innerHTML equals properly bound, right?
Why do we use bind?
1 second. Yep. So I don't really like this anymore, just because I don't have to use it. I can just do this, right? This dot Google or no down here, and then do my arrow function like that. E.Google or no. What am I doing now? Mixing up syntaxes in my head. It's confusing me. Google or no. It's the equals, right? Equals that. So that's my preferred way, and then I don't have to use bind. They're achieving the same things, right? You're not taking the performance hit because you're not defining a function inside of the render. But this is just a lot more syntax, and you would have to repeat this for each method as well. Yeah, so if you wanted to also bind the handle click, you need to do that. It's a lot more long-winded. So try and use that syntax with that in the future. It's still not fully supported, this syntax, so it is a bit experimental. It's not part of the standard for the language yet, but hopefully it will be very, very soon. Yeah. It's supported in all major browsers still. Cool. We won't go into what bind and call and apply is until a bit later on in the course when we look at let's call this, but we will cover it at some point. Yeah. Any other questions related to events?
Why do we use bind?
I've just said that, Kate. I've just said we won't go into why we use bind at the moment. Yeah.
Can you scroll down a little bit? Okay. I understand.
Yeah. All right. We will leave it there, and we'll look at.
Help us write only this Google or no, and without any syntax. Yeah?
Yep, that's perfect. Just like that. The same as when you're using bind, but instead we can just use an arrow function here as a method. Yeah. Cool. That's it then.